Imagine this. You're walking through a bustling Indian city, phone in hand, your connected calls, messages, streaming videos, your whole digital life unfolding. But behind that everyday convenience, that seamless connection, there's a high-stakes drama playing out right now in India's Supreme Court.
It's a truly pivotal moment, actually. One that could redefine the future of telecommunications for an entire nation. We're talking about Vodafone Idea, or Vi, as most people know them.
Right.
One of India's telecom giants. And they're taking a really bold stand against a massive government demand. The ripples from this, well, they could affect everything from your monthly phone bill to, honestly, the very landscape of India's digital ambitions.
And today, we're diving deep into this specific flashpoint. Our mission is to unpack what this legal showdown is truly about, why it's been simmering for, well, decades, and crucially, what it can mean for your mobile services and for the future trajectory of India's digital dreams.
Yeah.
It's September 9th, 2025, and V has just filed a fresh petition in the Supreme Court of India. They're challenging a new demand from the Department of Telecommunications, the DoT.
That's right.
For an additional 2,774 crore in what are called adjusted gross revenue, or AGR dues. It's a particular demand covers a period up to the financial year 2016-17.
And this isn't just about a number, although, 2,774 crore is certainly significant. It's really about the very survival of a major player in an absolutely vital industry.
Right.
And by extension, the stability of the entire digital ecosystem. This latest petition isn't some minor squabble. V is essentially, well, throwing down the gauntlet against this new bill.
And it's complicated, too, because this isn't even the original figure they were asked for, is it?
No, exactly. To complicate matters, it's actually a reduced figure from an initial demand of nearly 6,000 crore. But even with that reduction, V firmly believes this amount is fundamentally flawed.
Okay, so they're not disputing the idea of paying dues altogether, but they're challenging the calculation itself. What's the core of their argument? What have they said the DoT has missed?
Well, Veena's central argument is that the DoT hasn't properly applied its own deduction verification guidelines. These were issued back in early 2020.
Okay.
And these weren't just, arbitrary rules. They were specifically crafted after a major 2019 court ruling. Their purpose was to ensure transparency, fairness in verifying legitimate deductions. Things like bad debts or interconnect usage charges, basically costs the telcos incur. VNI believes that by sort of overlooking these crucial guidelines, the government's approach inflates their dues significantly. It misses legitimate offsets.
Got it. So it's the method, not just the final number. What are they actually asking the court to do then? What's the ideal outcome for VNI here?
They're pushing for a complete quashing of this specific demand. And more than that, a comprehensive reassessment of all AGR figures covering up to the 2016-17 financial year.
A full do-over, basically.
Pretty much. They want it done strictly in alignment with those 2020 guidelines, ensuring what they see as a fair and accurate calculation.
To really grasp the gravity here, we probably need to zoom out a bit and talk about AGR itself. Because this term, adjusting gross revenue, it's been the root of this decades-long dispute, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's central to everything. Think of the telecom world as this vast, invisible infrastructure. Operators like V are using these invisible highways, the airwaves, to carry your data, your calls.
That's the spectrum.
Exactly, the spectrum. And just like any highway, there's a toll, a fee. They pay the government for the right to use these airwaves, almost like rent. Adjusted gross revenue, AGR, is essentially the pot of money from which these telecom firms calculate their share to the government.
And that share is what? License fees and...
Typically about 8% as license fees and another, say, 4 or 5% as spectrum usage charges, or SUC. It's how the government owns revenue from granting the licenses.
Okay, that seems straightforward enough. But here's where the real complexity, the twist that has kept lawyers very busy for decades, lies. What exactly counts as gross revenue?
Precisely. That is the multi-billion-dollar question. Should it only include money directly from phone calls and data plans, their core telecom business, or should it also pull in, well, pretty much everything else?
Selling phones.
Yeah.
Or other side businesses.
Exactly. Handset sales, maybe revenue-sharing deals with content providers, or even newer ventures like IoT and cloud services they might offer. Telecom companies, quite naturally, always argued for a narrow view.
It's just the core stuff.
Just the core telecom earnings. But the DOT, the government, insisted on a much, much broader net, pulling in all sorts of revenues that the companies generated using that licensed spectrum.
It's like the telcos saying, we pay based on our main job, and the government saying, nope, we want a cut of all your income because it all stems from the license we gave you.
That's a perfect analogy. It really captures the core disagreement. And like you said, this isn't new. It's been simmering for years, stretching way back to the 1990s liberalization.
And there was an earlier court ruling, too.
Yes, a 2003 Supreme Court ruling actually favored the broader view even back then. But it all really came to a head on one specific day, October 24th, 2019.
Ah, yes. The big one.
That day, the Supreme Court dropped what many called a bombshell. In a landmark ruling, the apex court sided decisively with the government. It declared that AGR must encompass nearly all revenues generated by telcos.
Nearly all. What was excluded?
Only a tiny handful of things, like certain taxes and roaming fees paid to other operators. But otherwise, pretty much everything was in. This wasn't just a legal decision. It completely redefined the financial framework for the entire industry.
A bombshell indeed. What was the immediate impact? What did this ruling actually mean in rupee terms for companies like V?
Overnight, this decision unearthed a staggering, almost unbelievable 1.47 lakh crore, that's 1.47 trillion rupees in past dues across the entire sector.
Wow. Across a whole sector.
Yes. For Vodafone Idea specifically, the hit was brutal, and initial liability calculated at over 58,000 crore. Bharti Airtel faced similar huge demands, around 44,000 crore.
And smaller players.
Smaller players like Tata Teleservices, Reliance Communications, they were hit even harder. Some were pushed into insolvency. It wasn't just a recalculation. It was like an earthquake hitting their balance sheets, fundamentally reshaping the entire telecom landscape into fewer, bigger players.
So the 2019 verdict didn't just rewrite balance sheets. It fundamentally reshaped the sector. Companies suddenly found themselves buried under this mountain of debt. But then there was a bit of relief offered, wasn't there?
Yes, a crucial one, actually. In September 2020, the Supreme Court offered a lifeline. They granted a 10-year moratorium, essentially a temporary pause on the payment of these AGR dues.
A payment holiday.
Exactly. It allowed operators to spread the burden. And crucially, the interest during the first 2 years of that moratorium was set at a reduced rate, around 4%. This was vital breathing room for these really beleaguered companies.
That sounds like a significant reprieve.
Yeah.
Gives them some time to figure things out. But even grace periods have an end date, don't they?
They absolutely do. And that end date is now looming quite large. March 31st, 2026. That's when the full repayments kick back in.
And for V, what does that look like specifically?
For V, it means facing 6 equal annual installments, each one a staggering 18,000 crore, starting right after that moratorium lifts. It's a huge cliff edge.
On top of their existing debts and operational costs.
Precisely. And remember, beyond this immediate demand we're discussing, their current overall AGR liability, including interest and penalties, stands at approximately 75,000 crore as of the June 2025 quarter. The clock is truly ticking, adding immense pressure.
Given that enormous debt hanging over them, it's clear this current petition isn't an isolated incident. V is, well, they've been fighting this battle relentlessly through various legal avenues, haven't they?
They really have. It's been a constant struggle. Just last month, in July 2025, the Supreme Court dismissed similar pleas from several operators, including V and Airtel.
What were they arguing then?
They were claiming there were computational errors in the overall AGR pie, which, as we said, still exceeds 1 lakh crore for the industry. But the justices basically said, that's for the government, the DOT, to sort out, not us. They directed them back to the administrative process.
So batting it back to the DOT, and those legal challenges haven't always gone V's way before either, right? There was another setback earlier this year.
Yes, in May 2025, the court turned down petitions asking for waivers on interest, penalties, and interest on penalties related to the AGR dues.
And that was a huge amount for V.
It was. That alone amounted to something around 30,000 crore for V. Just the interest and penalties part. In fact, in one court affidavit around that time, V even warned that without some kind of relief, survival itself might be impossible.
Really painting a grim picture.
Absolutely. They mentioned potential shutdowns, job losses. It was stark. So they've kind of exhausted the administrative routes, made representations to the government, only to be largely rebuffed, and the Supreme Court keeps pointing them back towards the DOT.
So this fresh petition feels like maybe a last resort. Trying a different angle.
It seems that way. They're now betting specifically on this argument about the 2020 deduction verification guidelines, hoping to force a reckoning on the calculation method and ensure, due process is followed there.
Okay. To really understand V's precarious position today and why this fight is so existential for them, we need to zoom out a bit further. Look at its backstory. It's quite a tale itself.
It truly is. Vodafone Idea, as we know it now, was born from what many observers called a shotgun wedding back in 2018.
Right, the merger of Vodafone India and Idea Cellular.
Exactly. This union created what was, at that moment, India's second largest telecom player. They boasted over 400 million subscribers. The goal was very clear: pool resources, gain scale, and try to effectively counter the massive disruptive force of Reliance Jio.
Jio. Their entry in 2016 just changed everything, didn't it? Hard to remember the market before them.
Oh, absolutely. Jio stormed the market with free voice calls, dirt cheap data. It completely upended the pricing structure. It slashed tariffs and subscriber bases for pretty much everyone else. It forced this drastic consolidation and restructuring of the entire industry.
So the VIA merger was really a defensive move, a strategic necessity.
Very much so, born out of necessity to survive that intense competition. But this merger, despite its strategic logic, came at a huge cost. A combined debt pile that ballooned to around 2 lakh crore.
2 lakh crore, wow.
And then just a year or so later, bam, the AGR shock hit, adding tens of thousands of crores more to that already massive burden.
So fast forward to today, and V has pretty much been in survival mode ever since, trying to manage this debt.
Constantly. They've been trying everything, really. They've sold off assets like tower infrastructure. They've converted government debt related to spectrum dues into equity.
Making the government a major shareholder.
Exactly. The government became the largest single shareholder, and they've leaned heavily on government support, like that 25,000 crore equity infusion approved back in 2021. Yet their financials still tell this persistent story of struggle.
What do the latest numbers show?
Well, in the most recent quarter ending June 30th, 2025, they reported another consolidated net loss of around 6,600 crore. While their operational revenue ticked up modestly, the real killer was the skyrocketing finance costs, which makes perfect sense given the massive historic debt burden we just talked about.
But are there any positive signs? What about things like ARPU, average revenue per user? Are they managing to make more money from each customer they still have?
Yes, that's actually one of the brighter spots. Their ARPU, a really key metric for telcos, did jump a healthy 15% year-on-year to 177.
How did they manage that?
Mostly thanks to tariff hikes they and the other operators took, plus a strategic shift trying to get customers onto higher-value data plans. While their overall subscriber base did dip slightly, ending around 216 million, they are adding 4G users and making efforts to improve network quality, which seems to be helping keep customer churn somewhat in check.
But the debt.
But the debt, and specifically the AGR component, still looms incredibly large. That AGR albatross, you could call it. As of March 2025, V's total debt stood at around 2.1 lakh crore, with AGR forming a massive chunk of that. It's just this relentless weight holding them back.
So this battle, then, it really isn't just an isolated incident for V. It feels symptomatic of deeper tremors, wider issues throughout India's entire telecom ecosystem.
Yeah.
It feels like a bellwether for the health of the whole industry.
Absolutely. The sector, which was once this huge growth engine, adding millions of jobs, boosting GDP, it now grapples with an intense oligopoly dynamic.
Meaning just a few big players left.
Exactly. You've got Jio dominating with over 450 million users, Airtel hovering around 380 million, and then V with its 216 million fighting really hard just to stay relevant as that third major player. This kind of concentrated market, it can lead to less innovation, less choice for you, the user, down the line.
And the general economic environment for these companies isn't exactly making it easy either, is it? What are the broader pressures they're all facing?
Precisely. Intense price wars, largely kicked off by Jio's entry, have just eroded margins to razor-thin levels for years. At the very same time, they face these huge capital-intensive upgrades.
Like 5G.
Like the massive transition to 5G, which demands billions and billions in investment just to keep up. Now, the government's 5% AGR share might seem modest in isolation, but when you multiply that across trillions in revenue generated by the sector,
I think that's up very quickly.
it adds up incredibly quickly. And critics argue that the broad AGR definition actually punishes innovation. Why penalize revenues from, say, new digital ventures or enterprise services that could actually fund better core networks for everyone?
While the government's view is.
The government's view, the .et's view, is that it's about fair play. ensuring the state gets its due share for enabling the very infrastructure, the spectrum that powers digital India. This whole AGR saga, some estimates suggest, could see the sector's total AGR outflow exceed 2 lakh crore over the next decade. It's a massive ongoing transfer.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the listener. With all this complex legal stuff, financial maneuvering, these big debates over definitions and dues, what does it ultimately mean for you, the everyday user, someone just trying to get a good signal on their phone? Why should you care about Vodafone Idea's battle in the Supreme Court?
Well, most directly, it could translate into higher tariffs, higher phone bills for you. As operators face these increasing costs and relentless financial pressure, they're highly likely to try and pass those costs on. We've already seen some hikes.
Makes sense. What else?
It might also mean slower network expansions, especially in rural areas where Vi actually has a fairly strong historical footprint. If they're financially constrained, they can't invest as much in upgrading or expanding coverage, potentially widening India's digital divide.
And the worst-case scenario, you mentioned survival earlier. What's really at stake if V doesn't get some form of relief here?
Well, the worst-case scenario, frankly, would be a potential V collapse or a forced distressed sale. Imagine millions of users, 216 million right now, suddenly being forced to switch carriers.
Chaos.
It would be chaos. Widespread service disruptions. We all remember how absolutely critical telecoms were during the 2020 pandemic for remote work, online classes, just basic communication.
Absolutely essential.
And today, with things like AI, the metaverse, all these data-hungry applications on the horizon, reliable, pervasive networks are completely non-negotiable for progress. Of course, the T's perspective is also important. They emphasize fiscal responsibility. These dues fund public services.
Right. It's money for the government coffers.
Exactly, for everything from education to roads to defense. From New Delhi's perspective, officials maintain that those 2020 guidelines already provide ample ways to verify deductions, and any recalculation just needs to follow that established due process. They're holding firm.
So looking ahead then, what's V's plan B, or plan A maybe? What's their roadmap from here, besides this court case? And what are we expecting from the justice system in the coming weeks and months regarding this latest petition?
Well, Via's operational roadmap includes things like aggressive 5G trials they're testing in cities like Mumbai and parts of Punjab. They're forging partnerships for enterprise solutions, trying to get more business customers. Diversifying, exactly. And rigorous cost-cutting, obviously, like renegotiating deals with their vendors. They've even ventured into areas like Internet of Things, IoT, and cloud services to find new revenue streams, which, as we discussed, is a bit ironic given the AGR definition potentially pulls those revenues in, too.
Catch-22.
A bit of one, yes. Now, if the court grants relief in this current petition, specifically on the calculation method, it could unlock crucial capital for these initiatives. It could give them breathing room to invest, potentially allowing V to reclaim some market share and solidify its position as a viable third player.
And if the court denies it, if they say, no, stick with the .t's calculation, what happens then?
A denial, however, could be quite serious. It might accelerate talks of perhaps stake sales or even mergers or acquisitions, further reshaping India's telecom landscape into an even tighter duopoly, potentially just Jio and Airtel dominating.
And the government's stance, still firm.
The government, meanwhile, seems to be maintaining its firm stance. No further specific relief beyond the moratorium already granted. They keep asserting that the 2020 guidelines are sufficient for verification. So, as V's petition makes its way through the Supreme Court in the coming weeks, all eyes will be on the bench's stance.
Will they step in again?
Will they intervene again? Perhaps mandating a fresh audit based strictly on those guidelines. Or will they defer to the executive branch again, letting the DITT's math stand? Precedents suggest the court might be cautious about stepping into calculations again.
But the urgency is clear.
But with Vi's latest quarterly loss really underscoring the financial urgency, this specific legal challenge, focused on the process and guidelines, could potentially be the spark for broader reforms in how India governs its digital backbone, or it could be another closed door.
This unfolding chapter in the whole AGR epic, it really is more than just numbers and legal battles, isn't it? It's a story of resilience, in a way.
It is. Vodafone Idea, forged from these global giants and a strong Indian player, kind of embodies India's complex entrepreneurial spirit, merging to innovate, battling fierce disruptors, and now, yes, fighting for its very survival.
And in the grand tapestry of India's economy, which is projected to hit that ambitious $5 trillion mark by 2027, well, the telecom sector is an absolutely vital thread, wouldn't you say?
Couldn't agree more. With over 1.2 billion mobile connections fueling e-commerce, digital payments, education, governance, stability and health in the sector profoundly matters for national progress. It's foundational.
So the loan's defiance against this specific 2,774 crore demand isn't just, corporate maneuvering. It's framed as a plea for a level playing field, for a calculation that they believe is fair and just in a market that demands constant costly evolution.
That's their argument, yes.
As the gavel eventually falls in the coming months on this petition, the echoes will certainly resonate far beyond the courtrooms. They'll influence everything from your next data recharge pack price to the nation's really ambitious digital dreams.
The central question really remains: how will this ruling, whichever way it goes, ultimately shape the sustainability of our increasingly connected world, and specifically the future of India's vital telecom sector? And, maybe more importantly, what will that mean for the next generation of innovation that relies entirely on having robust, affordable connectivity? We'll definitely be watching.